Hi, I'm Anna McEwen, and this is The Epic Narrative. And now, my dad, Bob Switzer.
Well, here we are. Oh, man, I keep looking at 2 Samuel 11, the story of Bathsheba, and wow, this thing is layered with complications and relationships and impact. And, oh, man, this story has been used so many different ways because of all the layers that are there. It's not a bad thing that people use this story to do a lot of stuff. I think what's unfortunate, as I've said many times in this podcast, is no one really has the time to unravel it all. They at the very best, you can only mention the layers that are involved. Most of the time, you're trying to prove a point with Scripture, which is fine. We're going to take some time and try and peel back a lot of the layers to this, the cultural layers, the relational layers, the translation meaning of words layers. Like we're just and even like I just keep staring at it thinking I'm still not going to get to the bottom of this, and that's fine. I hope as I do with all of this podcast, that there are things that I say, nuances to stories that make you go, wait, I want to read that again. I want to dig in again. Bob asked that question, like, what if? I want to figure out what I believe about that. Anyways, that's what I want. I love telling the stories, and I love engaging people's minds and hearts again with these stories to say, okay, maybe what I've always said about this story isn't as simple as I make it sound. And that's as many times the story of Bathsheba becomes a simple story for people. Well, this is about lust. And lust brings forth, sin, and sin brings forth death, and boom, boom, boom. David fell. David falls. This is the falling of David. Sometimes this is the, they make a really great list of things that occur. Like this is how sin brings forth death, and they'll have I'm looking for one here. Stage 1. I read this. Being drawn away, being enticed. Lustful desires are conceived. Lustful desires give birth to sin. Sin becomes full grown. Sin brings forth death. And all that's like true. All that's true. But it also doesn't capture everything. So we're just gonna try. I have no idea how far we'll get today. I will try to not. I'd rather break this up into a couple podcasts than again try to rush it. So we'll just start. Chapter 11, verse 1. In the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army to destroy the Ammonites and besiege Rabbah. David remained in Jerusalem. So this often, this little verse often gets, I wouldn't say misinterpreted, but I think it gets, the nuances of it are lost because people don't remember that David had been requested by his men to stay at home from, I believe it's chapter 23. And if you go to chapter 10, where we just finished last week, it's clear David had done this before. He wasn't. I remember as a kid, middle school, I remember, some really intense preacher talking about the lustful sin of David and Bathsheba. And it's funny to me that I still remember it. But he was like, you see, David was in when he should have been out. He was up when he should have been down because of the next verse. He was doing all the wrong things. David stayed home when he should have been out with his men at war. This is when kings go off to war. This is when kings go off to war. This is, David stayed home. He was lazy. He was overconfident. And I get it. I do. Because that is often what happens when we walk into sin, when we give into lustful desires. We're overconfident. We're in places we shouldn't be, doing things we don't normally do. All that's true. So I don't take it away from the lesson, but in my study, I don't think that this was unusual at this point in David's life. They had asked him not to come to war anymore. They were going to put a siege on the city, which means basically we're gonna pound their army in the valley, and when their army retreats, we're gonna surround the capital city and we're gonna lock them in. And siegings took on different nuances, I guess. Sometimes, like in Jerusalem, that city was so well watered that they literally could live there in the city walls without a problem, because they had a water source, and they would literally just plant grain and corn and all that in the streets, and they'd irrigate it, and then the people would be like, fine, like, you guys can sit outside, we'll sit inside. Eventually, you're going to get tired. Like, you can't pay all these guys. All these guys are eventually need to go home. They've got their own farms. They've got their own livelihoods, and your troops will go down, and then our troops will come out, and we'll be able to, win the battle. So it's this, act of will, basically. So they send Joab out. Why? Because he's a legend. He's an amazing general. The men follow him. He's passionate. He's a good warrior for David. Even though periodically he does go off and do his own thing, David trusts him and he loves him, and they get along. They have a really great working relationship. I don't think he's one of David's friends. Like, I don't think David shares his heart with Joab, but they do share a ton of battle experiences. They share some pretty tight spots that they've gotten into and out of. They probably have done battle back to back. They have both ended up with blood of the same, warrior on their faces as they've done battle together. Like, this is not like David being like, "Hey, Joab, I'm going to put you in charge now. I'm kind of tired. I'm kind of feeling, middle-aged. I got the middle-aged spread. I put on a little weight over the winter. I can't run as fast." No. I mean, I do know that people have preached it that way, and they've used it, especially like at men's. Usually David and Bathsheba, often, I shouldn't say often, it's like at a men's conference or men's, group. Well, men, you're feeling a little lethargic, your testosterone's down a little bit, you're not doing what you should be doing in order to keep yourself out of trouble. If David had gone to war with his men like he'd always done before, he wouldn't have gotten in trouble. He shouldn't have been at the palace. He should have been out at the battlefield. If you're not doing battle for what? Well, come on, Bob. I can't remember. If you're not doing battle, then you're falling apart. Careless. Yeah, there you go. That I knew I'd wrote it down. Somebody wrote, like, so many conquerors have been defeated because they've gotten careless after so many victories. They don't go out. They get out of the battle mindset. They get out of the warrior mindset, and they no longer are putting up the defenses that they need to put up anymore. When you're young and you're attractive and you're ready, like you're ready. If somebody flirts with you or Or if you see something that you know you shouldn't, you do the battle. It's like, no, I'm not going to look there. No, I'm not going to turn on that video. No, I'm not going to, walk in that bar anymore. I'm not going to walk in that restaurant anymore because those women are scantily clad. They let their nope, not going to do it, like their cheeks hang out or their other things hang out or whatever. And it's the same, well, I don't know if it's the same because I'm not a woman. Ta-da! There's a revelation for you. But if you don't do the battle, if you're not out doing battle, then you're overconfident and you'll fall. Now, there's truth to that. There is truth that if you're not doing the battle, you will fall. You do have to be vigilant. You do have to be alert. You do have to pay attention. But the fact that David wasn't at battle, I don't think is a big deal. I think this is part of the agreement that he had, that we get referenced for in chapter 23. So there you go. That's what I think is going on. David sends Joab. He sends the king's men, the whole Israelite army. Now, the king's men would have been his personal guard. Not all of them. I'm sure he had guards at the palace, but he probably sent Benaiah with a contingency of his own personal guards. Why? Because they're amazing warriors. And when the battle is almost won, they will call for David, and David will ride out, and he will ride into the city victorious. And that was a very humble arrangement that Joab had with the king. You stay home, we'll do the tough work. You get to ride in victorious. You get credit for all the victories, which he had done. And I think it was chapter 8 or no, where were we? Chapter 9 or 10. No, chapter 9. Because that's where the list of all the nations that had been subdued, all the cities that they had overrun, and all the people that were now under agreements with the country, bringing wealth and servants and riches into their homes. So all of that's going on. All that's going on in the first chapter, or in the first verse. They were going to have a fight with the Ammonites, and then they were going to besiege their capital city. They planned on victory. They had a great strategy. Joab was in charge. He was going to make this happen. David got up from his bed one night, an evening, and walked around the roof of the palace. Again, this is not an unusual activity. He did not. The evening was anywhere after 3 p.m. So because of the heat of the day, everyone would tended to find a cool spot and in essence take a nap. They would just kind of, hang out somewhere because it was hot. So there it is. It's probably late afternoon, because everybody would go back to work in the afternoon. If you've ever been to the Middle East, then you probably are aware of this. This is also true a lot in Europe. That culture was built around this afternoon siesta, these afternoon times of rest. Now, they didn't always take a nap. Sometimes they'd sit around a pot of tea or a hookah, whatever, and they just sit and in essence fellowship. They'd hang out and have long conversations, the various businessmen, the elders of the city. And then after a few hours, when the sun kind of waned a little bit and the weather would begin to cool, then they'd go back to work, and they'd work until often until the sun disappeared. They didn't have an evening meal until, good grief, like sometimes they didn't even, they wouldn't eat till 9 o'clock at night. It wasn't that unusual. So the fact that he got up from his bed in the evening, again, it's not that he was up when he should have been down, which is the reference back to my middle school days. That he should have been in bed. He'd been sleeping all day, lazing around, not paying attention to his health, not paying attention to his personal hygiene. He's just lazing. He should have been at battle. He's a little depressed, maybe, a little despondent because he wasn't doing what he was designed to do as a man. He should have been out. But I've heard it all, which is not. It's just not entirely true to the culture of when this thing was written. That's all. It's not that people are making bad points. I think they're just doing bad research. All those things are true for lust. You do need to be alert. You do need to be aware. You shouldn't be places where you shouldn't be. You should know where you should be. You shouldn't be lazing around, getting despondent, getting bummed out. Some teachers, preachers will say, well, he had all these wives and concubines, so he was a sex addict. He was constantly sleeping with women. So he'd broken the principle of that God had set in the garden, where it should be one woman for one man for their life. And David had given into the cultural expectation that the multiple wives and concubines, and so he was having sex all the time. Women were of little value to him, and except for his own lust, and lust was out of control, and he was on the prowl. He was up because it was nighttime, and he knew he could look for more women. And my word, like, again, the concept is true. I just don't think you can draw it academically from this passage and be true to the passage. I'm not saying that that the principles of lust shouldn't be illustrated and discussed. They should be, because we do need to be careful. But along that same line, what I've found in my 30 plus years of ministry is another principle of the kingdom, which is you reap what you sow. And if you are constantly talking about lust, if you are constantly protecting yourself from falling into sin, then you will reap the fruit of constantly being on guard against sin, and you'll give in to sin. It's ridiculous. I've met people. I've been in cultures where this is all about it, right? Oh man, all pastors do and youth pastors talked about was ways that they protected themselves from falling into sin, especially, when I was a young youth pastor, right? I'm 20 years old, 19, I think I started in a part-time role, but you're barely older than the people that you're, quote, pastoring. And yes, I think you do have to be alert to that, but to focus on it, you actually are planting these seeds that say, oh, I'm going to give in. Oh, I got to be careful. I'm going to give in. I'm going to give in. Lust is going to get me. Lust is going to get me. I'm going to sexually sin. I'm going to fall in love with a teenager. I'm going to do the wrong thing. And you're in this culture where you're constantly planting these seeds of failure, and then you're trying to keep the fruit from growing. The focus needs to be on godly principles, because then you're planting the seeds of godly principles and you're reaping the benefits of that. So it's really about planting seeds of being the protector of innocence, planting seeds of being the one who's been now entrusted with all of these young, beautiful, innocent lives. And your role as a protector, a hedge, is not a role of, oh my God, I'm gonna give in. I'm gonna give in. Oh, she's so beautiful. Don't think those thoughts. Don't think those thoughts. But she is. Oh my word, look at her. Oh, don't think those thoughts. Don't think those. I gotta beat myself up. I gotta go repent. I gotta fast. I'm gonna fast for 400 days straight. No water, no food. I've got to beat this lust out of me. That's honestly, that's Gnosticism. That's Greek Gnosticism. The Romans were like, well, you just give into it because the flesh is the flesh. You feed the flesh. It doesn't impact your spirit. Just do whatever you want. And the Greeks were like, you got to beat your body into submission. And they had all kinds of ways to literally beat themselves into submission so that they wouldn't give in to the lust of the flesh. Glory. Well, I totally lived in those worlds, and I watched a number of my youth pastor friends give in to the lust of the flesh and sleep with younger women. And some of my friends were maybe they weren't youth pastors, they were youth leaders. They had been recruited by the pastor. They were young, married people, but they gave in. You got to be careful of the seeds that you sow. I'm going to try and unpack all the stuff that David might have been going through on this time in his life, but I don't think it's as easy as he was a little despondent, little overweight, had given up on being a warrior, and he slept all day, and now he's up at night on the prowl because he's a sex addict. I just don't think you can be academically true and draw those conclusions from the words that are written. I could be wrong, and that's fine. This is my podcast. I get to be wrong in my own way, but just consider those things, because it is something we have to be aware of. You reap what you sow. You get what you focus on. And your best battle against the lust of the flesh is to focus on loving Jesus and loving people, having his perspective on who they are. Because then you begin to protect it, you begin to encourage it, you begin to be a source of life for those people, not a source of lust. Because if you start giving in, if you start focusing in on why would I give in to the lust of the flesh? I gotta protect I gotta think through all the reasons why I would give in to the lust of the flesh and sleep with somebody or want to sleep with them, because if I think it in my heart, it's the same as doing it in reality. I need to what is wrong? What is wrong? And what are you doing? You're focusing on what's wrong. What's wrong with me, or what's wrong with my marriage? Well, she doesn't do this. I bet you somebody else would. Oh, it just goes. Or he doesn't listen. He doesn't listen. He doesn't spend time. If this person seems to love to be with me, loves to listen to me. It sends you down some pretty crazy paths, and you can destroy a lot of things. So David got up from his bed. He walked around the roof of his palace. This probably walking around thing was something he did on a regular basis. And it wasn't just, a 5-minute walk. He probably conducted business up there. People would come and find him up there. I did something similar when I ran a youth camp. It was, I called it my afternoon office, my outdoor office. So I am a routine person. I like to do the same routine, even if life isn't going in a routine way. Like, I tend to get up about the same time of day every day. It's early, as I say on my webpage. I'm known to be a morning person. It's true. It's why I'm down here usually at 6 a.m. recording, because I've literally already been up for an hour and a half. I am coffeeed up. I have probably put down close to over 100 ounces of water. So I am hydrated. I am caffeined. I am like looking around for things to do. So this is what I do. I come down and do this. Now, my wife isn't in town right now. She's off doing something with her family. So I'm still up at my normal time. I get up, I do my routine. Okay, so why were you telling this story? Oh yeah, the engineer's like, Bob, the camp story. Yes, I know. I actually appreciate you saying that because I couldn't remember why I was telling people about my life. So at camp, I had this same sort of thing. I got up 4:30 in the morning. I'd do my routine. I'd actually go down to my office at 5 a.m. I'd work there for about an hour and a half. I'd go home, make coffee for my wife. Then I'd go back down at 7 to get the to get the kids up. Breakfast was at 7:30. Like just I had a routine. In the afternoon, after lunch, I would hit the road. I'd go for a run. I get done with my run. I get done with my shower. Whatever. It'd be like 2:30, 3 o'clock. I get done with my shower. I'd stop by my main office, and then at 4 o'clock, when there was what we called like cabin activities, right? Everybody's with their cabin. I would take my radio, which was with me all the time, and I'd go sit at a particular picnic table that overlooked the lake out by the beach, and I would just sit there, and I would often just sit quietly because I'd love to listen to the sounds of camp. I love to hear and observe the movements of campers and their awesome counselors that I'd all personally recruited, and I could hear and smell what was going on in the kitchen as they were preparing dinner, and I could hear the clanking of dishes in the dining hall as people were, setting up the buffet lines and putting out the silverware, and I would hear the maintenance guys driving by with a lawnmower or walking by with a weed whacker or something like that, and we'd wave and say hello or talk about something. Like there was just simple things that I would do in the afternoon. And that would have been the quote evening time that David would have been on the roof. The sun was going down, but it was still plenty, you still had a couple hours of it up, but it was going down. And for me, there might be a breeze some nights. Sometimes the lake was perfectly still. It was like glass. I'd watch the boat float back and forth in the water. Watch fishermen go by in their rowboats or their little motorboats. It was just simple. There was also camps across the lake, and I would listen for those sounds and hear their squealing out in the playing in the waterfront. And sometimes my radio would, somebody would be like calling me on the radio or need an answer for something, and I'd give it to them. They were back in the office. Somebody, hey Bob, so and so's on the phone. I'd be like, oh yeah, just take a message. Or I'd be like, yep, all right, I'll come back. It wasn't that far of a walk. So when I hear that David's walking on the roof, I consider this to be that sort of thing. It was a regular routine. He got up in the afternoon and he went out on the to walk on the roof of his palace, and he observed the city. He listened to the city. He could catch the smells of the city. This is not an odd thing for a ruler to do. He loved the life that was going on. There was construction going on. Remember, the terraces are being built. The new government buildings are going up. He's expanding. There's fascinating things to watch. All of this stuff is, creative engineering that's occurring to move the logs into place, to backfill into the terrace, to make sure that the new building is constructed on something that's sound. The stones that are being laid, the chisels of the craftsmen that were, putting together the entrance or carving the doors. These are all things that a king would have been interested in, especially a king as multidimensional as David. David was always looking on the lookout for the next leader that could be in charge of something. He was fascinated by what was going on and what his city looked like. He was a legend. He was a legend on the battlefield. He was a legend as a king / governor the government that he was putting together. I'm guessing on one side of his roof he could stand and he could hear the worship that was going on in the tabernacle. He could hear the musicians. He could hear the singers. I'm guessing he always heard the percussions. You can always hear those, like I hear those, outside the church building when they're practicing on Sunday mornings, and I'm outside with a blower clearing off the walkways for people. I shut off the blower. The main thing I'm hearing is that kick drum. And I'm guessing he could hear that and he'd probably smile because, man, that was quite a day bringing that ark in. And he remembers the first time he tried to bring the ark in, and that was not a good day. But it's here. And that vision, that revelation that he had from the Lord came true. It's a fascinating time. It's a good time of day. And he's looking out over his city and observing life. And again, this is something leaders should do. They shouldn't be intimately involved in every decision. They should be able to observe what's going on and encourage what's going on and come alongside what's going on. And he's looking for ways to be encouraging. And he looks out and he sees a beautiful woman. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. So he sees a woman bathing. Okay, this came as a surprise to me, and I remember when I first read it, I thought, "Whoa!" But I read it in a was it a secular writer? Here's the bottom line. It's not unusual. It was not unusual for David to see bathing women. It's where people would bathe because for the most part, it was a place of privacy. And sometimes they even had, hedges, or they'd kind of be in a cubicle. It was where the water could get warm. They would, and it wasn't like a bathtub, right? There would be, it was sometimes it might have been like a big jar, basically, where they might stand in it. It reminds me of something like in American culture, something that you would have remembered, or if you ever saw, you'd have to be as old as I am, I guess. In old westerns, you would have like this big tin circle that was barely, about 6 inches of water in it, and the guys would just sit in it, or they'd stand in it, and they would just take a washcloth and they would wash themselves, and they would let it all dribble down. And then, in some westerns, you get like the big tub at the where all the women were at the saloon, and you paid a lot of money for that. The big brass tub. And the rich people had tubs, right? Anyways, on with the show. It would not have been unusual for him to see a naked woman on a rooftop. I don't think that's why he's on his rooftop, but let's just say he would see it and probably be like, "Oh, yeah, all right." And he'd just kind of move on. Or maybe they weren't, like naked, but he could tell if he looked out over the city, he could see certain people periodically, occasionally. It was clear that somebody was taking a bath. The other thing that I found in my research is that women who wanted to be a part of David's harem would take the opportunity when they knew that David was on the roof, or any king. This is not just a David king thing. This is any king. Women who wanted to be noticed or become a part of David's, the king's, harem. They would try to entice a king to see them. You'd say, no, not in Israel. Yeah, in Israel, in anywhere. You would have your own version of whatever, the Kardashians, who, for I don't know them personally, never watched their show, but generally speaking, their name is synonymous with selfish promotion. And women would selfishly promote themselves. It wasn't a bad gig. If you could get into a harem of a ruler or a wealthy person, if you could get noticed, then occasionally you'd have to sleep with them, but generally speaking, you're cared for. You'd get a room slash what's called an apartment. It wasn't like an apartment that you and I would consider an apartment, but it would be, a couple rooms, a bed, a place to, if you get pregnant, then you have an opportunity to potentially have even better care, because now your children would be educated and and cared for by other servants. There was benefit. There were those who were looking for a job to be noticed by rich people, by rulers, and especially by the king. So David's out on his roof. He is looking at the city. He's observing the construction. He's smelling the smells of dinners. Well, probably not dinners being made yet, but he hears the marketplace going on. He sees the city gate and the busyness that's going on. He sees the wealth that comes into the city and the trade and the marketing and it's an awesome thing. He's the king. And he's out on his roof and he sees various whatever on other rooftops, not just people bathing, but just people making flour for dinner, crushing the wheat grains in order to create, maybe people checking on their wine or drinking, whatever. It's all good. But there was somebody who was very close to the palace, and she was bathing, and she was very beautiful. That's important. What is it about her beauty? Now we'll break that. I'll probably break that down more so tomorrow. But part of what he saw, I believe, is innocence. I think innocence is probably one of the most powerful attractions between a man and a woman. Innocence is something that so many try to emulate after they've lost it. When I when I see so many models, women models, what do they try to look like? They try to look innocent. They try to look young. They try to look unsoiled. Even if you know that they're not innocent, even if they're in what we would call the porn industry, what are they constantly trying to do? They're trying to make it look like it's her first time, because there's something about innocence that cannot be duplicated. You can act like it, but the actual attraction of it disappears when you no longer have it. I believe it's one of the main reasons why people were, as far as the kingdom principles go, God's like, I want you to stay together. I want you to stay together forever. Because if you wait till marriage, you will never lose your innocence. My wife and I waited till we were married. We've been married it'll be 35 years soon. My wife still carries the passionate look. When I look at her, she is an innocent, beautiful woman, and I'm attracted to her. Sometimes a little bit more than she'd like, because it's like she's like, seriously, like we're in our 50s, and I'm like, but honey, you're so gorgeous. That's enough about you, Bob. I know, I didn't mean to get it. You can, if you'd like more details on that, feel free to email me at thebobswitzer.com. And not those kind of details. No, I'm not giving you those kind of details. Good grief, don't ask me for that. I think that's one of the things he saw in her. He saw her innocence. She was a married woman, but she hadn't lost her innocence. Now, for those of you that have lost your innocence, yes, I think God can give that back to you. I think that's one of the beautiful things about forgiveness and restoration that God's Spirit can do. And I think you can definitely have it back. And I've seen that. I've seen people that have been, that were married and divorced and remarried, and that innocence was restored to them. I think that's awesome. I think it's awesome. I can talk maybe more about that at another time. I'm about to head down this whole like couples therapy thing, but innocence is powerful. And I think most of the women that were trying to get seen by David weren't innocent women. They were beautiful. They were, I'm sure, sexy. And it wasn't like an everyday thing. It was an occasional thing. He's up there and he would see it and be like, oh, there's one. But this one caught his eye. And I just think it's because part of it is because she was innocent and she was close enough that he could see a little more details of her than most of the other women that might be trying to get his attention if they were out. Because you see, she was in an apartment that was close to the palace. So he asks. Now this is the first layer of complications. David's out on this roof. He's not alone. There's servants that are around him, attendants that are waiting to be called on, and of course there's officials that come and go off the roof to deal with issues that they need his attention. And David calls somebody over, and he says, "Can you go find out who that woman is?" He sent someone to find out about her. Now this person can't just go knock on the door and then run upstairs and talk to her. Why? Because she's taking a bath. She's in no condition or position to answer her door. So one attendant of David starts asking about this woman. Do you guys know the woman? She lives right over here. No, I don't know. Why? Who's asking? David's asking. Why? People are curious. Why is David asking about that woman? Why? Why would they ask why David's asking? Because David has wives and concubines. What is David worried about a woman for? And they're like, well, I don't know. She was out taking a bath, and David wants to know who she is. And then there's probably 2 or 3 people that this person talks to on their way out. Eventually, they find somebody who knows this person. And they're like, oh, Bathsheba lives there. She's married to Uriah the Hittite. Oh, got it. So they go back to David. She's Bathsheba. Now, I don't know if he's still watching her. I kind of don't think he is. I think he observed her for a while until he thought, people are going to think I'm staring. Or if she looks up here, it's going to be obvious that I'm staring. There was something about her that aroused in him a desire to be with her. And he didn't even know who she was. Which is not unusual for fantasy, right? When it wasn't bad for him to look at her. It wasn't even sinful, I think, for him to look at her and be like, wow, that's a beautiful girl. His biblical principle should have been, the kingdom principle should have been, as king, one of my roles is to protect the innocent. My role is to protect the innocence of the women of the realm. And in order to protect it, I need to step away. I observed it. I know. Okay, she's beautiful. No doubt. And she clearly lives close to the palace, which probably means I know her, or I should know her, or she probably works for somebody who I know, or she's married to somebody that works for me that I should know. I probably should just leave this, I should leave this one alone, because my observation of her should be that of heaven. And heaven sees her as a beautiful, innocent woman who has value, who should be honored, who should be protected by the men in her life. And I need to be one of those men. I need to be someone who honors and protects her, because that's the principles of the kingdom. David had a choice. He could have just walked away. He could have walked away and not been like, oh, David, you're an evil man. You thought bad thoughts. You're such a lustful man. Oh, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? He should have. That's that negative mindset. That's that victim mentality. That's the sowing seeds that will just reap for you the fruit of lust. He should have looked at her and he should have said, whoa, all right, she's beautiful. Like okay, I can't, yeah, all right, okay, I can't stay. I can't keep looking, but I understand my role as ruler of this amazing nation that God's entrusted me. His position is she has value and I need to honor that. I need to protect that. And even if he's curious who she is, he doesn't have to find out then. He can find out later. But you see, he didn't take that position. And anywhere along these choices that he makes, he could have chosen to be like, all right, I need to do the right thing here. I need to protect who she is. So he finds out who she is. She is Bathsheba, daughter of Elam, wife of Uriah the Hittite. Now I'm just going to stop there. Not like stop talking, although I should. I've been going on for 45 minutes, but David gets the list. She's a daughter of Elam. Whoa. That would make her connected to Ahithophel. That's the granddaughter of Ahithophel. She's a wife of Uriah the Hittite. Whoa. All of these relationships, just the four that we know, Bathsheba, Ahithophel, Elam, and Uriah. All the relationships, all the connections, just those four connections with David, let alone all the attendants that are / servants that are already involved. Right there, David had another huge choice to make. He now knows I am connected more than I know to this girl. And the fact that he chooses to continue to move forward in his lust is one of the reasons why this makes it such a big freaking deal what he's doing. Because of all the characters and observers and participants in the story, that the nation becomes aware of this. This is a big deal. When you find out, okay. When you find out the ramifications of your choices, the relational ramifications of your choices, this is where it should make a difference. Relationships are what transform lives. I heard that as a young man I think I was 18 or 19. Relationships transform lives. I cannot find anywhere where that is not true. David finds out who this woman is, this beautiful woman. And he should have, in a relational way, that should have stopped him. He observed her. He shouldn't have, when he saw her, like that word in the Hebrew means he did more than just glance. And as bad as that was, he could have walked away and relationally been sound. But afterwards, he sends out for some basic information. He finds out who it is. He should have, based on the relationships he had with mostly those three guys, and his observational relationship with Bathsheba at that time, he should have stepped away then. No more questions asked. He should have just said, "Oh, whoa, yeah, bad. There's no way this ends well." But the crazy thing about sin. This is true. I've seen this true my whole life. Sin never makes sense to the people who are observing it, but it always makes sense to the people that are doing it. So many times in my counselings that I've sat with people over the years in ministry, or even if they're not, like just people I know, neighbors and others that I sit with, you start listening to their explanation of what they're doing, and you know what they're doing is bad. Like I sit in front of them. I sit in front of them and think, how did any of this make sense? How is what you're doing make sense? But when you're in it, it does. When you're in it, you keep thinking, no, it'll work. It'll work. It's in a smaller sense, it's like the lie, right? You tell the first one, and then you need a second and a third and a fourth, and by the time you're whatever 15 lies in, you keep thinking one more lie and everything will be straightened out. One more lie and this will all make sense. One more lie and it'll all go away. And you just layer upon layer upon layer. And when you try to explain your processing to somebody else, they look at you like you're crazy because it never made sense. That's where David is right now. He should have walked away right there. She's Bathsheba, daughter of Elam, which would have made her the granddaughter of Ahithophel and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. David should have been like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm dead. Okay, that's not a good idea. But he doesn't. He doesn't stop there. But I am going to stop there because it's been 50 plus minutes and I think we've hit on enough stuff. And we'll pick this up again next week. Have yourself a great day, everyone.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.